Hello, and welcome to another live broadcast here in The Authentic Married Woman. I am your host, Karen Seitz, and I am a coach and a mentor for married women. And what I really do is to teach women to regain their sense of self and find their happiness within as a way to solve the issues in their marriages and create the marriage that they always dreamed of. One of our biggest problems as women in a relationship, and I hear this time and time again from the women I work with, it's also my own experience in my own life, is that within a marriage, within a relationship, we get so lost from who we are that we don't know who we are anymore. And when we don't have that connection to ourselves, that's where we're going to start to create problems in our lives and problems in our marriage. And that's what we've really got to look at first in order to see change in our marriages, to see change in our lives. And that's a lot of what we're going to be talking about today. So, the title of our video today is The Secret to a Happy Marriage. And we're going to dive into what it really takes to get out of the issues you're experiencing in your marriage so that you can enjoy it. And so it's a place where you can grow and learn and that you are happy to be because you are happy within yourself. And what I want to talk about to tease that out and to help you see that secret, what it's going to take to have a happy marriage, is I actually want to talk and tease apart the quote that I posted in the group last week. One of my favorite things to come on and talk about are these quotes that I post because, myself included, I'm guilty of this, and all of us, is we can read something really inspirational. We can read a quote that's really motivating, and we're like, "Oh, that makes so much sense. I love that." But a lot of times we're not quite sure how to apply it to our lives or what it really means on a deeper level. So it's a great way to have a deeper understanding, to see how you can take something that is inspirational or motivational to you and really get it at a deep level for yourself so you can take that information and actually apply it in your life. I think something that we get tripped up on as humans is we want more and more information, like a great quote or a great book, but we don't know how to apply those things so that we actually experience transformation. And what I'm about in my coaching and what we're about here at a New Life Center isn't more information, but really teaching the tools for transformation so you can get a different result in your life, in your marriage, a different result in your dreams and your goals. So that's why I want to tease this quote apart and really get into what the secret is to a happy marriage. So, the quote that I posted in the group last week is, "It is one of life's greatest ironies that no matter how much we want to be different, wherever we go, there we are. There's just no getting away from ourselves." In the attempt to get away from being with ourselves, we search for something or someone to make us happy. The grass constantly appears greener someplace else. But in every relationship and in every situation, there we are again. So what we want to look at in this quote really is exactly what it says, that no matter where we go, there we are. That the problems that we're experiencing in our marriage, the problems that we're experiencing in our life, are a reflection of the problems that we have in the relationship that we have with ourselves. Life is mirroring back to us the own issues that we have with ourselves. And the way to change that is to really take a deep look within ourselves and work on ourselves in a way where we cultivate a relationship with ourselves so we're not trying to get away from ourselves. And the concept that I teach that goes hand in hand with this is understanding ourselves as the common denominator in our lives, seeing that we are the one constant in every single relationship, that it's not the men, it's not the people in our lives, that you're the common thread, and that's a really good thing, even though that can be a tough pill to swallow. And it's very difficult to look at ourselves in that way, is very empowering because it puts us in the driver's seat to change those issues. And we never know what we can change in ourselves that's going to create a direct impact on our marriage or in other relationships in our lives. So, the myth that I want to bust today is that it's the men that are the problem. And we get so caught up in that because we really, really convince ourselves it's in our human nature to think that it's what our husbands are doing or what they're not doing that's causing us to be unhappy and causing us to have the issues. And we tell ourselves, if they only changed this, if they only did that differently, then I would be happy and our relationship would be better. And that's a trap. That's where we put ourselves in a place of being a victim, meaning blaming something or someone else for our experience, whether that's how we feel on the inside and what our fears and our insecurities and our negative feelings about ourselves, or if that's where we are at in our lives, what's happening externally. When we think it's the men that are the problem, ladies, we trap ourselves. It's not that they don't have issues or that they don't contribute to a relationship and the challenges that are there, but we don't have any control to change the men in our lives. We don't have any control to change anyone else but ourselves. And it's probably a good time to just briefly review the three principles that this group is set around and the three principles around what I teach to help women have successful marriages. And it ties into to all of this, that the first principle is you're responsible for your happiness, that there's nothing anyone or anything can do to make you happy. And on the flip side of that, and this can be challenging for us, no one and no thing can make you unhappy. That happiness and unhappiness is an internal experience of ourselves, and we must take responsibility for that, especially if we want to see change, especially if we want to feel good about ourselves and have the lives and have the marriages that we want. We have to take ownership of our happiness and we have to take ownership of our unhappiness so that we can change it, which that leads right into our second principle, which is you are the only person you have any control over to change. There's no one you can change, and there's nothing anyone else can do to change your experience for you. And that's a place that we get really tripped up. We all know at some level we can only change ourselves, but we get disillusioned and we get caught really focusing our energy on trying to change our husbands or trying to change other people in our lives or thinking if they change something that would change our experience for us. And quite frankly, that's futile. It does not work. And so you have to put the focus on yourself in the right way with the right strategies, so that it's not coming from a selfish place, but actually a productive place that leads to transformation and leads to change. And our third principle is that in order to be an authentic married woman or just be an authentic woman, to be real, you must have a relationship with yourself. And that means knowing who you are. And a lot of times, and I lived in this space for a very long time. I thought knowing who I was just seeing all the good things, all the positive things about myself, and ignoring all the negative things or all of my challenges and limitations or all of my flaws and imperfections. I wanted to shove all those things under the rug and just present myself as this very put together woman. I live in perfectionism. And that's not having a relationship with myself. That's cutting off a whole portion of me that I really need to get to know so that I can catch myself and make different choices in my life and my marriage and really show up as who I am. So having a relationship with myself does include knowing the good things about me and knowing my gifts and knowing my strengths. But it also includes looking under the rug and being honest with myself and having integrity to see those things about myself that are difficult to look at and difficult to take responsibility for. But the gift in that is then that allows me to make choices so that I can show up as the best version of myself, not pretending, but actually being very aware of who I can be when I'm living behind my walls or living in that place of victim mentality and thinking it's my husband or thinking it's all these circumstances outside of me. Getting to know that underbelly of who I am is vital, absolutely imperative and having a relationship with myself and being able to be vulnerable and show up fully as the best version of myself. And when I can do that, the power in that is when I know who I am and I'm willing to bring all of who I am into a relationship and have integrity with myself to show up as the best version of me that I can be for myself, then my marriage begins to reflect that back to me. It begins to reflect those good things about myself. And that's where connection becomes created between my husband and I, is because I'm being who I am. I'm showing up fully as myself, responsible for my choices and my actions, understanding that my choices and actions have a direct impact on the experience I am having of my marriage, of my life, and everything that goes along with that. So, in order to be an authentic woman, I must have a relationship with myself. I must know the ins and outs of who I am so that I can make choices that empower me and are in integrity with myself. And you have the same capacity to do that for yourself. And it's imperative if you want to have a happy marriage. And so that actually is our secret that we're talking about today, is that third principle, that the secret to a happy marriage is having a relationship with yourself and knowing and understanding what that means and being able to learn to do that for yourself and have the accountability to build that relationship with yourself, that every relationship that you have in your life is a reflection of the relationship you have with yourself. So that's what we're diving into. And that's what this quote is about, that no matter how much we want to be different, wherever we go, there we are. And the challenge that we have as humans and in our lives is that when things get hard, when things aren't going the way that we expected them to go, we run away and we look to change our external world thinking things are going to be different, but we end up with the same thing over and over and over again because we haven't changed who we are on the inside. We're actually running away from ourselves when we change our external circumstances because we don't like the way that it's going, or it's not what we expected it to be, or we're blaming that circumstance, whether that's our marriage or a job or a family situation. We're blaming our experience, our unhappiness on those external things. So we think we have to change externally in order to have a different experience. But when we do that and we don't work on the one person we have any control over to change, ourselves, then we end up in the same situations over and over again. But the mind plays a trick on us and we really think it's, oh, it's my boss, or oh, it's my husband, or oh, it's my past that's causing me to have this experience. We're not able to see, oh, I'm the constant here and I haven't changed myself. So of course, if I change jobs or if I leave my marriage and get into a new relationship and it all ends up the same, then of course that's a reflection of me and what's going on in myself. And we call that, again, being the common denominator, being willing to look at yourself as a common denominator so that you're not running away from yourself. You're actually facing yourself and facing the issues so you can work on you where the root of all your problems lie, so that you can experience true change and you can experience true transformation. So I want to share a little bit of my own story as being the common denominator in my relationships with men, and until I was able to have a new perspective and to see things through a new lens, I was very caught up in my story of thinking that I always end up with the same type of guy, or I always end up with the same issues in a relationship, and it's always the guy. I was very disillusioned because I didn't have another way to look at it. I didn't have any other context, and how we work in our humanness is we externalize our experience from the mind. We're focused on everything out here as the problem, and that's where we get really, really stuck because again, we can't change those things. And what happens is we begin to guard ourselves and protect ourselves from life, and that's where our walls come into play, and we push life away, we push our relationships away, and we're stuck in the same problems. And so I had to look at that. I had to get a new perspective because how I was looking at it before, thinking that it was always the men that were the problem, didn't get me anywhere. and I almost ended up with a failed marriage. And my marriage was failed, but I was fortunate enough to find a new way and to find a new path and really begin to build that relationship with myself, which changed everything. And now I'm very blessed to be able to teach women to do the same things for themselves. So including my husband, I've had five serious relationships in my life. And I was what I would call, and many of you are familiar with this term, I was what we would call a serial monogamist, where I would get out of a relationship, and this started, at 18 after my first high school relationship ended. Might go a month or so not being in a relationship, and then I jump and hop right into a new relationship. I never stayed single very long, because I didn't want to be alone with myself. Exactly what the quote talks about. We search for something, or in the attempt to get away from being with ourselves, we've searched for something or someone to make us happy. And that was me in relationships with men. I always thought that it was a relationship or a man, that was going to make me happy, and that was kind of unconscious. I probably wouldn't have admitted to that, because I toted myself as the strong, independent woman. I don't need a man. But really, unconsciously underneath that, having a relationship with a man was my everything. It was all I ever wanted, and was kind of addicted to that. So I would always hop into another relationship. So um, I've had five serious relationships, and I always thought it was the men, and I always thought that I just ended up with the same guy, and that's why all my relationships failed. It was the men, and that put me in a position of not being able to change. So the biggest problems that I've experienced in relationships, and please, as I share this, use it as a window into yourself. See if you can relate to these things in your own life, and see if you can relate to these things in your own relationships, so you can start to have a new perspective, and you can start to look at a new lens and give yourself hope that there's room for change, and that your marriage can change if you're willing to turn inward and look at yourself. So the biggest problems that I always had were that I never felt important. I always felt like I came last, and that I wasn't a priority, to my partner. I always felt like I had to carry the weight of the relationship. I felt like I gave and gave and gave, and I was always focused on the relationship, but I never got anything back in return, and I always felt empty. Um, Another challenge that I ran up against in relationships over and over again were that communication was non-existent, and it was always on my partner's side. That he was shut down. He didn't want to talk about hard things. He didn't want to resolve the issues. He shut down in arguments. That was my story, and I'll talk more about that in a moment. Another major issue: I never got the attention that I wanted. I felt undesired, ignored, and there was always something wrong, or always something that needed to be fixed. I was always creating problems where there were no problems, and everything was always an emergency. So see if you can relate to that, and see some of those issues in your own relationships and in your own past with men. If you're watching right now, you can drop a comment in the comment box of like, oh my gosh, yeah, totally relate to that. And use this, like I said, as a window into yourself. So the more and more I thought it was the men that were the problem, the angrier I got on the inside, the more bitter I got on the inside, and the more walls I put up around myself. Also, the more I would try to run and try to change my external world, trying to get away from those issues, trying to get away from those problems. And so I had to stop, and I had to reflect, because I wanted something different. I wanted a different experience. I wanted a chance at a healthy relationship, and I was blessed enough to find the tools that I get to teach now, and completely change my experience. And like I said, save my marriage, and now have a very healthy relationship with my husband, and we just keep on growing and keep learning. But I had to look at, okay, how was I the common thread? How was I showing up in these relationships that caused those problems? Not to beat myself up, not to make myself wrong or bad, but to actually give my chance to be the solution to these problems, and be the change that I was desperately seeking in my life, because it wasn't working to wait for the men to change, or to keep getting in different relationships. So this is how I was the common denominator, and see if you can relate to yourself. also, and seeing this in yourself. Again, not to beat yourself up, understanding this is just our human nature. This is how we protect ourselves. These are the patterns and habits that have been there a long time. And the purpose of seeing these in yourself isn't to beat yourself up. It's so you can see the things you're not seeing, and what you have control over to change. That if you were able to change these things, how they would directly impact your marriage, and how they would directly impact your life, and the different relationships that you have. So I was always closed off, always very guarded, always had walls. I made everything my partners did wrong. I was always trying to fix them, and find the things that they needed to change. So I was always making them wrong in one way or another. I had no focus on myself, and all of my focus was on them or the relationship. That when I got into a relationship, it's like all the things I enjoyed, all the things that I did went out the window, and I became who I thought it needed to be for my partner, or who I thought I needed to be to keep the relationship. Um, I was jealous, needy, and possessive. Although I had a very nice facade that I was easygoing and the cool chick and wasn't jealous and wasn't needy, but oh, I was very jealous, very needy, very possessive. And these are things I had to look back in hindsight. I was unconscious of these things while I was going through these relationships, because I was placing the responsibility of my experience on my partner, so I couldn't see how I was showing up. This was all done in hindsight, wanting to learn about myself and wanting to grow. Um, I wanted to be their everything, and when I wasn't, I was cold and distant. I would really shut off. I was never available. I had no idea what a healthy relationship was, and did nothing to learn. Although I made it look like I was doing something to learn. I had all the books, I went to couples counseling, but underneath my motive was always to change my partner. I'm going to read this book. I'm going to get us in couples counseling. I'm going to do all these things because they need to change. So I wasn't really looking at myself, and learning for myself how to have a healthy relationship. I wanted my partner to become healthy and my partner to change in order for me to have a healthy relationship. I never wanted to really be in the relationship in the first place. I just wanted the relationship so I didn't have to be alone. I made nothing I did count. I always made my partners the problem. I had no sense of self, and who I was in the relationship. And I was always being who I thought I needed to be to keep the relationship. So again, see if you can relate to some of that, and not, again, not to beat yourself up, but so you can see if can you imagine showing up this way in a relationship, how that causes some of those big problems, like not feeling important, and feeling like you come second place to your husband, or you're not a priority, and how communication isn't going to be very good if you're cold and distant, or you're not being yourself, or you're always making your husband wrong. um, never getting the attention I wanted. Well, if I was so focused and lost in the relationship, I wasn't giving myself any attention, at all. I was putting myself on the back burner. And if there's always something wrong or that needs to be fixed, well, if I'm making my partner wrong and I'm not available, and I'm not wanting to be there, then that's gonna show up in my relationship. And so it all starts with me. So when I can work on these things, or when you can work on these things in yourself that are causing you to have an unhealthy marriage and causing those problems, ladies, that empowers you. I know it can feel like a heavy weight, like, well, I already feel like the relationship falls on me, and you're asking me to take more responsibility. Well, this is coming from a different place. It's coming from a constructive place to put yourself in a position to change your behaviors, and to change what's going on in you, so you can see those results in your marriage. Even if you just take 50% responsibility, and look at your 50% of how you contribute to the problems in your marriage, then your marriage can be 50% better by you changing those things. And the really amazing part is that when you change what's going on in you, and you work on that relationship with yourself by understanding who you are, and shining the light on the ways in which you show up that aren't really being the best version of you. When you can do that and you're with a good man, and I'll talk about what a good man is in just a second, he responds to your changes. It's amazing. And when you take responsibility for your happiness, he responds to that almost overnight because a good man, all he really wants for the woman he is with is for her to be happy. And when we can do that for ourselves, it changes everything. That's why we have, I've talked about this before, that's why we have quotes in our culture and our society like happy wife, happy life. If mama ain't happy, ain't nobody happy. We have those quotes because they're true. We set the tone as women. We set the tone in our families and set the tone in our relationships. And we can fight that and say that's not fair and I don't want that responsibility. But those dynamics are there. And so when we can take responsibility for that and focus on ourselves and do the things we need to do to be happy on the inside and to have that relationship with ourselves, a good man responds almost immediately. Good men are simple. It doesn't take a lot. And they really do just want us to be happy. And when you do that for yourself, everything changes. It doesn't mean there's not issues. It doesn't mean there's not still things to overcome and work on, but things change dramatically and it's amazing. So a good man, what we mean by that term is it doesn't mean your husband's perfect or doesn't have flaws and things might you maybe have had problems in your relationship for a while and those are showing up. And so maybe he is withdrawn, maybe he is shut down right now. But a good man, if you think back on the man you married and the man you fell in love with and that you wanted to spend your life with, you want to see, a good man is responsible, they're hardworking, they're trustworthy, um, they have good intentions at heart, they mean well, they want to do the right thing. And maybe you're seeing something else in your husband right now that is often a result of us having our walls up and we begin to project our own unhappiness onto them. And that doesn't make us wrong or bad. Again, it's just our human nature. And so when we can change that and take our walls down, at a good man at his core, he wants to be loving, he wants to be kind and caring. And so when we take our walls down and we can be soft, meaning that strength without fear, we're not constantly protecting ourselves. A good man responds to that almost overnight. And I know that can like, yeah, okay, that might be hard to hear. You might be in a place you don't understand my husband or where we're at or our issues. I get it. I was there. And it's really vulnerable to think you've got to go first to see this happen and experience this. But really, when you do, and you're using the right strategy, and you have the accountability, and you're getting the right training to do this, it really, really does work, and it makes things so much simpler because instead of putting all that focus on your husband and the marriage and trying to work on the marriage problems and trying to work on changing your husband and the communication and all the issues that are there, you get to take all of that energy and put that onto yourself and fix your unhappiness on the inside and fix the issues in your relationship with yourself to begin to be who you want your husband to be for you, to show you the appreciation, to understand you, to validate you, to care for you, to show you love. When you begin to do that for yourself, do those things for yourself with genuine intent and the right tools, then you begin to see that in your relationship with a good man because that is who he is at his core. And you have to be that for yourself first. And that's a very vulnerable position to put yourself in because you're like, well, will this work? But you have to be willing to take that risk. You have to be willing to be vulnerable and go there first. And that's where you can work on you and changing yourself so that you don't run away from the issues because what ultimately happens when we think it's men that are the problem or our husbands that are the problem, again, doesn't mean they don't have issues, doesn't mean they don't have flaws, but when we're putting the focus there, what often happens is that somewhere along the line we give up and we run away and maybe we leave our marriage or we shut down or we think something's going to be better somewhere else. And that's where we run away from ourselves and we run away from the issues we have in our relationship with ourselves. And then we create the same thing over again. So think about the times that you've ran away and see if you can relate to this. That when we move somewhere new and we say we leave um, one city or town and we go to another thinking things will be different there, or we leave a job because we think it's our boss We don't have a good boss, or our boss is a jerk, or my coworkers and my team is awful and I need a different experience. So we leave a job and we get a new job, or we leave a relationship and we think the next man is going to be different. Or we give up on a goal and we things get hard and we're working towards something and we give up, and think, well, maybe this just wasn't for me, because it gets really hard. Or when if we're an emotional eater, when we are emotional eaters, we're running away from the problems in our life and we're running away from our feelings. We don't want to feel those difficult things, or we don't want to face those things within ourselves. Or when we wish we were someone else, or we wish we had a different life. Those are symptoms of running away from ourselves and not wanting to be with ourselves and change the only person we have control over to change. And it's not until we work on ourselves that we're going to see anything different in our marriage or anywhere else in our lives. Um, so just I think in looking here to see what else, if I missed anything here. So um, if you think it's men, if you think it's your husband, I mean this in a kind way, and this is something I had to look at in myself. But if you think it's them, you're screwed. You're not going to be able to change the issues. You're going to trap yourself, because you're not working to look at yourself and change the who you have power over to change. And you'll end up in the same relationship again and again and again and again, even if it's a different guy. But you'll fool yourself. You'll play a trick on yourself, thinking it's always them, and your life will go by and you'll be stuck in the same issues. So it's time to do something about this now. And it's time to take the focus off of your husband and off of the issues in your relationship. Give that a rest for a little bit, because trying to work on those things, I did a video about a month ago on that's a surefire way to fail. So I'll post that in the comments section so you can check that out too. Um, but you've got to take that energy and focus you're putting there and put it on yourself, and work on building that relationship with yourself, which means rolling your sleeves up, taking the flashlight out and looking underneath the rug, at yourself, and taking a hard look in the mirror, not to beat yourself up, not to make yourself wrong, but in a constructive way so you can begin to be the solution to your problems. And that's where, when you're willing to do that for yourself, you will see those changes in your marriage. If you're married to a good man, and you have your walls up, when you start to work on that and you start to work on yourself, you will see changes in your marriage. And the beauty of it is you'll see changes everywhere, because your whole life is a reflection of yourself, and you are the common denominator in your whole life in every area. And so when you build that relationship with yourself, you let go of those limitations and you let go of your stories. You let go of your past, that you don't have to live in that anymore. You don't have to carry that around anymore. You can actually work to let those things go, so you're free and unencumbered to live the life you were meant to live and be the woman you were meant to be. We can do work to let those things go, and then it's like magic in your life and you will see change everywhere. So, in wrapping up today, what I'm here talking about is the quote that I posted in the group last week, which I'll just read one more time. It's one of life's greatest ironies that no matter how much we want to be different, wherever we go, there we are. There's just no getting away from ourselves. In the attempt to get away from being with ourselves, we search for something or someone to make us happy. The grass constantly appears greener someplace else, but in every relationship and in every situation, there we are again. So, the solution, and talking about this today, the solution and the secret to a happy marriage is building a relationship with yourself, looking at you, looking at the things you don't want to see so you can make different choices, and impact your marriage and impact your entire life. That when you make different choices, the results you get out here are totally different. And that empowers you to change and empowers you to take the reins of your life and create the marriage that you want, create the relationships that you want, so you don't keep running away, and you don't keep running away from yourself and then just creating the same mess and the same problems somewhere else. You can stop doing that, and be change and work on transforming yourself and transforming your life by, again, focusing on yourself, holding the mirror up, looking at you, and realizing you're the common denominator. So thank you so much for being here. If you're listening and you're like, oh my gosh, okay, this makes sense. I am the common denominator and I want to learn how to build a relationship with myself. And I want to know how to do that in a constructive way and see that change in my marriage, then I can help. And it all starts with just a conversation. So you can go to anewlc.com/talk and book a free 1 hour call with me where I'll help you get underneath those stories that you've been carrying around. And I'll help you see what you need to do to build that relationship with yourself and work on yourself so you can see those changes in your marriage and see those changes in your life. And we'll set up a game plan and a strategy unique to you so that you know what you need to do and how to solve those issues in your marriage and be who you want your husband to be that person for yourself. And in doing that, then you'll get that back in your marriage and in your life. So I would love to talk. So again, you can go to anewlc.com/talk to book a free breakthrough call with me. And I hope you all have a wonderful weekend. And thank you so much for being here with me today. And I'll see you all again next week. All right, bye.